by doing anything just once, or once a year. To make matters worse, too often companies have relied on bias trainings that were ineffective or even counterproductive. Many early sensitivity-type trainings just weren't very good. For example, many of these sessions defined diversity to include anything and everything: attractiveness, weight, personality type, smoking. This blurred the real issue, which is whether well-documented forms of social inequality are shaping workplaces in ways that jeopardize meritocracy. The newer generation of trainings also often fall short. Many of these are based on the widely used implicit association test, IAT. IAT-based trainings are an improvement on sensitivity training since they signal that diversity efforts must be based on rigorous evidence, which IAT seeks to collect. But IAT-based trainings too often focus on the cognitive bases of bias. For example, one video instructs viewers to watch people passing a basketball around. Often, participants are so intent on counting the number of passes that they fail to notice a large man in a gorilla suit striding across the basketball court. The video is a great way to highlight that human beings are designed to pay selective attention to certain things while tuning out a lot more. But what's the takeaway? Look for gorillas? This book uses a different approach that is still evidence-based. Instead of focusing on people's subconscious thoughts, I like to look at how people actually behave. Consider matched resume studies, in which researchers use resumes that are identical but for one factor, to see how likely each candidate is to get a job interview, promotion, etc. By eliminating every difference except for race or sex, these studies provide objective evidence that bias drives decision-making. One of my favorites is a study where researchers responded to over 1,300 employment ads and found that a candidate named Jamal typically needed 8 additional years of experience to get the same number of job callbacks as a candidate named Greg, who, again, had an otherwise identical resume. Another favorite study sent 1,276 job applications using the identical resumes of 2 women, the only difference being that one listed her membership in the Parent-Teacher Association. The mother was half as likely to get called back for an interview. The researchers found similar results in a lab experiment in which they asked volunteers to rate the identical resumes on a number of factors. The results showed that mothers were seen as less competent and committed, less worthy of promotion, and less suitable for management. They were also held to stricter performance and punctuality standards than childless women, and were offered $11,000 less in salary. As with this study, most matched resume studies don't involve real job applicants. Do these studies actually describe what goes on at work? My research over the past 10 years, surveying people across diverse industries and actual workplaces, shows they do. At the Center for Work-Life Law, my team invented a simple survey that picks up bias based on race, gender, social class origin, and age. We call it the Workplace Experiences Survey, WES. When I describe the results of our studies, for simplicity I say, for example, engineers rather than respondents to our survey. Listen to the appendix for details. This chapter's epigraph comes from a respondent to that survey. In 14 studies of nearly 18,000 people in different industries and organizations over nearly a decade, we consistently found the same 5 patterns of bias. These are described in much more detail in one of my prior books, What Works for Women at Work, and in work-life law reports on gender and racial bias in academia, engineering, architecture, and tech in the United States and in engineering in India. Inclusion is the right goal, but it's too vague to be actionable. WES data pins down the jellyfish often described as lack of inclusion in a 100-question, 10-minute survey to make bias visible to those not affected by it. Here's what bias looks like on the ground, with verbatim responses from my research. Prove it again bias means some groups have to prove themselves more than others.